G'day and welcome back to the Voice of a Veteran podcast. This is a very special episode. In this episode, I had a sit down with the one and only Dan Keighran, Victoria Cross winner. Dan is a young man with a young family, and the insights that come through in this podcast are really insightful as we dive deep into purpose and authenticity. From a guy who has had everything but thrown at him and has come out even more so steadfast in who he is and why he does what he does. Really tune in, have a great listen. Some key takeaways for everyone, be you a veteran or not, from one of Australia's arguably most authentic individuals, Dan Keighran. Enjoy. All right, g'day and welcome back to the Voice of a Veteran podcast. I am here with the man himself, Dan Keighran VC, or Dashing Dan of Derapat, as I like to call him. Dan, welcome.
Happy to join you today, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, extreme pleasure to have you on board. For those listening, Dan is a recipient of the Victoria Cross, Australia's highest award for gallantry. I love it says for valour, which he received for his performance during the Battle of Derapat 2010, Afghanistan. You actually achieved it in 2012, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right, yeah, 2 years later.
Yeah, right. I love that story. So we're going to, because there's so much, I'm actually bubbling with excitement to talk to you, mate, just because recently Dan's released his book, Courage Under Fire. Did you know that is the name of my favourite Meg Ryan movie back in 1996?
I actually do, because I queried that when it came out. It's like, oh, yeah, I remember Meg in that movie. So I was like, are you sure you want to go with that name? And they're like, yep, good to go. So.
Mate, you got even more cred in my books for that. I remember 1996, I was in grade 6, so I was 11 years old. I remember watching that movie and it was fantastic. And there you go. Anyway, no copyright here for Meg Ryan, sorry. But you've released this book, mate, and I literally took 3 days to read it. And in the second half of this, I really want to go through that line by line because there's so much that is relatable to particularly the veterans that are going to be listening into us. And just the way you pull apart things and tell it authentically as it is from your lived experience, I want to jump into. But
more than happy. Yeah.
Good. To start with, I want to know, who is Dan, the man himself? We talk a lot about in the veteran community, loss of purpose, loss of identity. You are a guy who's gone through many identities, both your own, assumed and provided. How do you like to be identified as these days?
Look, that is a very interesting question to start off with, because I can tell you right now, it's certainly changed throughout the years. And I was a kid from the bush who had grown up with a very hard, tough upbringing to then, military service and then change of career after 10 years into the mining industry. So I was a miner for a bit, and then Victoria Cross comes along and it completely upends and changes my life. Yeah. To the point of, further study, finishing my master's in business to working where I am now in defence industry. So from a kid that grew up with dirt floors to where I am now, I have changed professions and changed a lot as a person along the way. I know I've sort of mentioned it in the book there, and you've already sort of mentioned it. I finished my career in defence and slept on the side of the road to get a job in the mining industry. So for me, it has been a wild ride the last couple of decades to where I am now. But for me, I think what is really important, and I always look back in this memory fondly, and it's of my grandfather's words to me when I was a kid of who you are as a person and what you represent. Yeah. And again, he was talking about your personal ethos. And for me, look, I've certainly changed over the years. But I think for me, it's important to be honest, and that was part of the book, the process that I went through. I wanted to be as honest as possible with what I'd been through and my experiences. So that's where I'm at the moment. So, mate, I'm just a normal bloke, just trying to get on and try and do the right thing where I can. That's it.
So Dan of today, if I'm going to introduce you to someone, how would you like to be introduced as?
Usually it's just Dan. That is it. Dan.
I like that.
Who's this? Yep, Dan. How you going?
Very good. And we're here in the beautiful suburbs of Brisbane, and this is the life these days. I mean, the majority of your service was at 6RR, and you have such an exceptional career. You definitely had a very unique time and experience, and I want to dive into that a lot. And how about your connection back to the veteran community? You still work within defence industry, but how are you still connected to the veteran community these days?
Yeah, look, absolutely, and I always will be. Look, I joined. I was 17 years old. I had 2 weeks from finishing year 12 to on the bus and my training started. So I will always hold defence in a special place of mine. Look, I grew up in defence. I was a kid when I joined, mate, and I was a man when I finished, certainly not my service, but my training. And I'd grown up a lot, matured a lot during that process. So I've always maintained my links with defence after leaving full time, and I am still a reservist, although it's quantified as representative duties nowadays. Yep. But I am still involved with a number of veteran charities now, and Mates for Mates, I've done some work. I don't really signal any individual out or so out, just because I if I can help, I try to help if I've got the time to be able to do so, and have supported a number of organisations from Soldier on to Mates and Mates for Wounded Heroes throughout the number of years that I've had the Victoria Cross anyway, because it has given me that platform to be able to talk to you today and talk to veterans.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Very fortunate to have that opportunity as well.
Yeah. He's a man that's had some polished training between that and now. I like it. No, it's good, mate. And it's great to hear that coming from you, that connection back to the veteran community. I mean, when I left defence, I sort of left and just wanted to move on and get amongst it. And reading through your story, you moved out and then got into your mining and, really had to focus on those sort of survival skills, providing for your family and what's next. So I'm fascinated by this reservist link and how you found that moving from, high-end combat through to a more sedentary life with just lineages through reservist.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was a tough call. So I wanted to go Special Forces. There's no secret there, and the body wasn't. The mind was willing. The body wasn't up to the task, unfortunately. And look, I look back and I certainly don't regret anything. But there's a number of opportunities where I could have taken early on, where I was in the right mindset and body was good to go, and took trips for whatever reason. Yep. But I couldn't do that. So for me, that was a number of reasons, but that was one of the reasons that I chose to transition out of defence.
Yep.
But it was I think I applied for 40 jobs at that point in time in my life. So this is 2011, and I didn't get a look in. I did not even get a call back, right? So here I am. I've taken my long service. I'm starting to freak out, going, well, do I, started pondering, do I go back into defence because I need to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
But fortunately enough, I did have a mate that was working in Kalgoorlie in the mines and said, look, come across. And hence I did. I literally, as I said, I drove across and started work the day that I arrived in Kalgoorlie. I went out to site, slept on the side of the road because that's what I had to do to provide for the family at that point in time. But for me, I was a bit lost at that point in time, and defence from a very professional organisation as it is, and there's always problems in defence and organisations that are that big. However, going from a professional organisation like that into the mining industry and the freedom that I had all of a sudden, it was a massive shock to the system. I think I did it in a way as well to try and transition and break as many ties as I possibly could.
Yep.
Not that I had bad experiences, but I think I wanted a fresh start as well in a new career.
Reinventing yourself?
Yeah, a little bit, mate. A little bit. I wanted to try something new, and for me, I think that lasted about 12 months, and there was a local reserve unit and a few guys there. I didn't have many friends that were there, and I was always away working. I was on the drill rigs doing diamond drilling and not blasting at that point in time, sorry, and
I heard that, the bagman.
The bagman,
that sounds
RC
terrible.
drilling. So literally 50 kilos worth of rock and sample that has been dug up, and you're literally just carrying it around all day doing 12-hour days in the sun. So it wasn't, wasn't
with your complexion.
Oh, I know, mate. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm looking the way I am now, right? So a few extra freckles, mate. But it was a good reset, I think. Yep. I didn't really have to think that hard. It was a process-driven thing from point A to point B. That's what I was doing. Right?
So I really want to hone into that. So you had quite a varied and excellent career, just as far as experience, deployments, and also your own personal experiences, the Victoria Cross aside, just as far as setting you up for to be an everyday Australian after this with some excellent life skills and experience, and really valuing what should hold value in today's society. As many would say, I definitely say, but I want to really hone in on that purpose. So your purpose for service, you sort of talk about why you wanted to join and where you came from in your upbringings. You were very, very heavily influenced by your grandfather.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can definitely relate to that. My grandfather served in Korea and Vietnam, and again, it's just incredible having those people in our lives to forward scout for us, or at least to help steady the rudder as well. But so much of your purpose to join the defence, is it correct to say, came from him?
Look, it was. I mean, there was two reasons. One was exactly that, and just that how I held him in such a high regard, and if he said that was okay, well then that was okay by me as well. And the other one was just that there was no opportunity, mate, where I was, and I realised that, and I was very fortunate to have his guidance. It's more of a mentor. Like, he was my hero. I say that all the time, but he was that individual that spent time with me, that would listen to me, that would guide me, that wouldn't really push me in any direction, but he was always there for me in that sounding board. And for me, I worked it out myself quite quickly that there was no opportunity where I was as a kid. I was going nowhere. who knows what would have happened to me if I had stayed there, put it that way.
Yeah, got it.
And for me, it was a way out of that lifestyle.
Yep.
Defence was a way out of that lifestyle, so I took that up. And that purpose was driven from, I think, individuals around me as well.
Yeah.
You're only as good as your team and that. And I had some great mentors and individuals throughout my career in defence that did want to make me a better soldier and a better person and perform to a greater level. And then I get out of defence, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah, no, gotcha.
But it was that transitional period, in the mines for that nearly 4-year period there, where there's a lot of freedom there, and the whole purpose of that again was to reset. And I didn't really get that opportunity. I started to get that opportunity, then I was dragged back in with the VC coming along. Now that sounds a bit harsh, dragged back in, but
understand.
I was 17 when I joined, and we already mentioned it was that was for me an opportunity to start giving back after you're awarded something like this. It is a sounding board again, or an opportunity to talk to people, to inform people of the mistakes that I've made. I've made plenty of mistakes over time.
Absolutely.
And to be a potential mentor to other people as well, to get them through some of the really tough and shit times that I had from that transitional period, because it wasn't great.
No, it's absolutely, mate. Hearing you speaking with responsibility as opposed to entitlement is so relieving. I haven't met many Victoria Cross winners. I've met plenty of people who've had exceptional performance and success in their career, and it's very interesting to see that as being often the catalyst through which they then conduct themselves with entitlement and expectation. Or as I can see with you, is that power it unleashes in a responsible nature, that nurturing, that mentorship, that ability to then utilize that platform to go back and support others, backcasting yourself as like, hey, what would I have liked to have known throughout my career?
100%.
Exactly. Everyone says like that younger you. What are some of those key stories that now that you have transitioned, you've gone through multiple identity phases where you are now, for those currently listening in service with everything that's going on at the moment and contemplating the next step in their life, what are the lessons that Dan has learned that he'd pass on?
I tell you what, that sense of entitlement, I think that straight away right there is the wrong attitude and mentality to have. I mean, we all work really hard, right? You work really hard with what you're doing, and I do as well. But for me, I think the lessons learned for me, the big things that I would go back and tell my younger self is certainly around risk. And I'm not talking about risk on the battlefield, but taking risks. For me, I was somewhat risk adverse. You wouldn't think so, but I really was. If there was an opportunity presented to me, going, well, am I good enough? Can I actually do that job? Is this something that I would fail at, or I'm going to look silly doing?
Is this imposter syndrome?
Have you heard of this? It is, man. Absolutely, right? 100% it is. But I think, again,
you don't suffer from that now.
No,
Victoria Cross winner, and
I suffer from a lot of things, mate. You mentioned one of them. I am, allergic to the sun, but for me, it was, am I good enough to do this? And I think studying the MBA was part of breaking down some of those barriers as well, going, well, hang on a minute, I've got all these other people in this room that are on the same path as me, and they've got varied experiences, and mine's very different, but I'm still doing it with them, and still still up to the standard of what they were as well. So I think that was part of it, but I think also I'm very fortunate where I've had all these opportunities from, I was working in Channel 7 as a guest presenter briefly to the mines, and then the defence background and the hardships and everything associated with that, and the situations that you put in, certainly on operations to now, running your own business, to on the speaking circuit. Like, I've had all these crazy, so different jobs, and the brains on creative side here. It's just all over the place, right? Yeah. So for me, I think,
do you enjoy that variety though?
Yeah, I did. Look, I think COVID's come along and sort of shaken that off a bit, but I think I've enjoyed the break as well. But I did enjoy that variety, and not many people get that, and I understand that. Not many people will have those opportunities. But for me, I've taken a step back further now and focused just on the career now that I have. Yep. Trying to anyway, and still trying to help veterans where I can, and still promoting mental health and I should say well-being as well, because it is so important. I haven't always had good days as well, like everyone else. We have good and bad days, and that transitional period, as I spoke about, was certainly tough. But for me, it's the risk taking. Take those risks. If I could tell myself,
put yourself out there more.
Put myself out there. What's the worst thing that can happen? You could fail.
Exactly.
We've all failed plenty of times, right?
No, I'm with you. I mean,
what have you got to worry about?
Even myself in the last year, mate. That realization that so often you are literally the only person holding yourself back.
Yeah.
And it's really important for people to hear it from someone like yourself. And where was that sort of point for you whereby you realised that you were often that person holding yourself back? Was there a catalyst, or is it ongoing? Or
I think it was probably a couple of years after receiving the VC, in all honesty. Look, I was completely, I'll go back a step again. I keep on saying that, but for me it was, I think, the realisation all of a sudden that there's an award now associated with my name. It's so much bigger than me.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there's all these expectations on you. And there's a certain way you need to behave and talk and this and that. And some of it was self-imposed, but some of it's not as well. There's just the history there and a custodian of something that is, held in such a high regard that you really need to adhere, I think, a little bit to some of what those that have gone before me who have had the award have done, because it is all of a sudden people want to talk to you and chat with you. And
it is so
I don't
interesting
know all
to
the
hear
answers, man. I don't know all the answers, but people do. But I've certainly lived enough life and I've had a varied life experiences to be able to comment on a number of things. So for me, absolutely, I look at it like that.
So it's funny, you do this incredible act to achieve the Victoria Cross and to deserve the Victoria Cross, and then all of a sudden you're then having the responsibility of the Victoria Cross. You can't just say like, look, I've did my deed, thank you so much for this. I would like to now relax and move on from my life. It's like, all right, now this is the new definition of you.
Well, look, I can always say no. And I think, look, honestly, we're talking about what I do differently. And that's part of it is realizing when your bucket's full and going, you know what?
Yeah.
Hey, I've got too much on my plate to say no.
I want to quickly dive into that because during my transition, I sort of got out, jumped straight into a business and then sort of left that. And like you, I sat there, I remember jumping on LinkedIn and Seek and putting in like over 100 applications without a single callback.
Yeah,
and probably you're I definitely can guess you're the same sort of person. If you can actually sit down and speak with someone, like you're going to win them over, through your competence and through your character. But then sitting there and thinking that you did have something to offer and then literally like zero callback. It's like that's a hit. That's where that imposter syndrome starts to tap in. And the ability to then turn that around to when all of a sudden you're being saturated with opportunities. There's already essentially this personal or professional trauma from rejection over here. So you start going to everything that comes in, I'm jumping on with two hands because I've come from being this, what's that, Eddie Murphy, the starving man to, oh my goodness, that's the best goddamn cracker I've ever had. You start throwing yourself at it. And then also you're then combined with this responsibility on top of it. That's a bloody avalanche ready to crush the man underneath.
Well, it hasn't been without its challenges, but I think, in a way, certainly didn't seek it out, right? I always acknowledge I should be dead for what I did in Afghanistan, and I know I wouldn't, and it's always important to note that I would probably not be here if it wasn't for my team and my mates. So I always say that because it's so true. It is absolutely true. But I didn't seek any of this out, right? So for it to completely upheaval my life, and it was an upheaval of opportunity nearly going, where am I going to go? It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard going, well, all of a sudden I've got 20 people going, well, hey, I've heard you speak or, I've done this. I think there's an opportunity here for us to do something from having nothing at all and having all those doubts going, well, I did have hang-ups about, well, can I actually do it? And then you start taking some of these things on. You go, well, I got repeat work. I must have done it right. And then you start building your confidence and going, well, why can't I do it? What's holding me back? And you said it before perfectly. It's ourselves or me at that point in time. I was holding myself back.
Yeah. So along the way, have you really, you've definitely got a lot of notoriety with the Victoria Cross responsibility that's come from that. Has there ever been those conversations internally to you, again, like Dan versus the VC, differentiation between the two, one supporting the other supporting you, getting to know and best represent yourself personally as opposed to just a custodian? I'm very keen to understand how that might have gone in your head.
Yeah, mate, look, that's a conversation my partner Casey and I literally just before about that, about an opportunity of doing something. And we're like, well, actually, how would that be perceived by someone who was awarded the Victoria Cross? And the answer was, well, that probably wouldn't be taken very well. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, I probably shouldn't do that then. Like those conversations happen often whereby I'm like, well, that wouldn't be, general public, whoever out there, my mates, my friends would go, well, that's a bit out of touch to be doing something like that because of what I represent all of a sudden. So, it's tough.
But see, this is
I don't know if I explain that.
No, I get you. But the key part for me that actually makes you so much more relatable, likable and inspiring is actually your authenticity. And again, reading through your book and even just talking with you and having these conversations, it's, the true Aussie part. And if there's like an Aussie flair to being a Victoria Cross recipient, it's actually being, true and authentic yourself and appreciating that, yes, you received this award, but at the end of the day, you're still a man, you're still your own person. And then this sort of path before you that is yours to forge. you talk about a lot of these considerations and conversations with activities. There's not an official measuring stick. I'm sure there are some rules, but it's in your, so you now have what you believe the expectations are of a Victoria Cross recipient. And then you have yourself who is a Victoria Cross recipient, and now you're trying to put them together to determine what you should or shouldn't do based off your own, primarily, holding yourself back or not allowing yourself to do things otherwise.
Mate, there's a book behind me with, all the recipients ever to have it. And you're right, you look at it and go, well, how have they conducted themselves? And then, how have I conducted myself? And where do I sit? Mate, it is, I don't know, maybe it's self-imposed and I should just do what I want, but that's not my way, mate.
Well, I think one strategy that I've developed is actually bringing it all back to purpose. And you'll keep hearing me saying this, and this is like this authentic purpose. And it was great for you diving in previously, talking about your purpose for joining the military. And I think so many people can level with that. Again, I finished school here in Brizzy, just turned 17, went straight into ADFA, and I was a brat. And thank God for the military. But then along the way, finding our purpose in service. And I'm probably going to guess that you very rapidly found your purpose to be those that you're served with. And that usually is how we go along. There's definitely the service to the nation, what you're doing. But then when it comes down to, be it when it gets tough, when you get in a gunfight, it's those people that you're with. And that's one of the hardest part for people to appreciate. Listening to guys like you talk is, during those times of combat, you're more worried about letting your mates down. And failing the mission, and that's a huge and powerful purpose that makes us not care for our own lives.
That's it, mate. It's a really good way of putting it, because I, everything that I did, certainly in operations and even in Australia, it was because of those around me. And when it isn't going well, and the bullets are flying and guys are getting hurt, you put yourself out there, because my purpose, certainly in that point and that time, is to look after those around me and to protect them. And I think for me, that has certainly got me through my deployments as well, and certainly focused me when it all went to shit. Is that purpose of trying to help. And I said this once before on a podcast, so I'll repeat it. But it is, I think, love for mankind, for those around you, love for your fellow soldiers to want to be there for them and help them when it is really going downhill.
That's it. It's that bromance, that love, that mateship. We try and mate. The biggest thing for me in realizing my own mental health progress, struggles, whatever it is that culture in defence really is that force field that protects us and that net that catches us when we fall. And that force field, or that layer of resilience that I would now call it, you don't worry about your personal ailments or anything else that's going on with you, because you're more worried about the men beside you and the mission you're trying to achieve. And then more importantly, I want to talk about then the loss of that purpose, the loss of that community when you then transition from defence. And it sounded like when you transition from defence, a real part of your purpose then went to like your family and your finances, and you have to resort back to those survival mechanisms. And that's going from a purpose outside of self that is the highest level, that exalts you to the highest level of performance, not based on anything other than your love for mankind, to then having to have your purpose as yourself. Can you sort of look back and reflect upon that and how that sort of made you feel when you lost those layers of resilience, essentially?
Yeah, look, I did. And I think from defence to the mining industry, not so much. I think I was still pretty good then. But I think from the 4 years after mining and then the VC coming along, and then, mate, I'd say floating around. When I say floating, not really. When I started writing the book, and certainly the last chapter there is, and I won't ruin it for everyone, but at that point in time in my life, I wouldn't say I was lost. By no means was I lost. But I was trying to reestablish that purpose. Absolutely. Right. It defines it quite well, I think, where I've had all these opportunities. I'm on the speaking circuit. I've started my study, and then finished it. But I hadn't had another career. I hadn't had that job really at that point in time, and got into it again and redefined myself. Yeah. I was sort of floating around a little bit going, well, what's next? And I asked honestly, I would get up in the morning and nearly look in the mirror and go, what's next? What do I need to focus on and get after? And honestly, I had that conversation with me, because I knew it was missing, and I knew that I needed something. Otherwise, then we start talking about, you just briefly mentioned, mental health and the positives and negatives. For me, I think that was a potential there. I could have gone either way. Yeah. And I was very fortunate that I was like, well, no, I'm not having that. I need to get after something, and I need to find that purpose. And for me, it was getting into defence industry, and the purpose behind that was to try and give back to those that are currently serving still, those that are in harm's way. If I can somehow give them the best equipment or whatever, or the tactical advantage from my input on this end of it, that was my purpose, and that is why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
That's so fascinating. I mean, within defence, the uncertainty around career is removed, because it's so well articulated in black and white progressions and milestones, needing to do your sub 2 course to be a substantive rank, everything else in between. And so it's very interesting for me listening to your piece on the outside. You know, every time I even hear you referring to the mining time, you sort of knew the progression there. And then all of a sudden, as a reservist, you're then awarded the Victoria Cross, and then you're moved into this representational position. And then to hear that your purpose getting back in defence industry isn't to sort of chase a career and chase the money that can be made in there. I mean, you as an ambassador is powerful for procurement as well as motivating people.
Can open doors occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, but not many people would not pick up the phone for you, mate. But then hearing that your purpose is actually giving back, that's where I find is the number one preventative and supportive treatment for veterans who are starting to struggle with that loss of purpose, loss of identity. Any way of reconnecting with, but even better, supporting that veteran community is not only therapeutic, it's so cathartic for veterans, helping veterans being such a huge part. So it's so interesting hearing that that's actually your purpose behind it.
It is now, mate, because I've been there and I've done it. We've done it tough. We've been in the, in the places we've been and going, you know what, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that, or, you know, my life would be so much better right now if I had this.
Good on you.
And I look at that and go, you know what, well, maybe I can affect change in that space.
That's brilliant, mate, because so many of us would prefer to sit there and bitch and whinge and complain. And
there's plenty of that going along at the time.
No, but the fact that, you know, I didn't come into here realising that. I thought you were looking for a nice, secure position, you know, reading a book from the outside, not through the pages. And it's so fascinating. So you are actively contributing to the current defence capability in the best way that you can.
Absolutely. And that was part of going to Australian Defence Apparel. So that was the load carriage, you know, so many issues with our load. I know you boys in the Special Forces don't have to worry about that stuff. But for us, man, at that point in time, big bass and body armour, and it didn't fit, and it was heavy, and it wasn't suited to purpose, and all these things, like so many problems we had.
I remember saying, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to be uncomfortable.
But no matter what was there, like it was absolutely, that was the catalyst for me to go, this could be done better. How can I try and affect change here to make it better for those that, when it really matters, you know, they are the benefit of me doing what I'm doing.
Brilliant. So talk me through it, because I mean, I've just heard you on the phone before. I'm not going to repeat confidential conversations, but obviously you're dealing with some very, very interesting stuff. And to be honest, stuff that doesn't really tickle me pink hearing about it, but then hearing here and now what your actual purpose is doing that is actually so encouraging and motivating. And I'm sure that is what is able to pull you again out of, hey, this is boring, this is tedious, this is not what I want. Hey, this is not for me. You know, this is for an end state, an outcome, a true and authentic purpose. That's awesome.
Absolutely. You can't a lot of it's tedious and that, but I'm not used to working behind a desk yet either, mate.
Yeah,
so
mate.
I'm still at that transition of going, well, yeah, here all of a sudden I am behind a desk. I never thought I would be. And I've had a few mates had a 10-year reunion with MTF1 just recently, and a number of them said, geez, I don't know how you'd be handling that working behind a desk. And I'm like, well, it has been a transition, but it's not, you know, it is for me, I should say, it is that purpose of, well, I can affect change, so I keep at it. And I'm also getting paid whilst I'm doing it. But it is, honestly, that's the end state for me is, can I affect change? Can I get the best equipment, you know, the tactical event, whatever it be, as long as I keep working towards that, I'm happy. So
good on you. So also at the same time, while you're there behind the desk, you know, achieving your purpose, at the same time, you know, have all these skill sets and particularly probably a lot of those people skills and wanting to more give back. So this speaking circuit and then having those other things to keep you entertained, and that variety, that must also be a critical part to what you need personally, yeah?
Mate, look, it is a speaking circuit. Like because I am still on the speaking circuit. I mean, COVID's killed that at the moment, but it is, for me, I'm an introvert, right? Massive introvert.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm so tired. So if I go and do a talk, I reckon I could sleep for a day afterwards.
Emotionally draining?
Yeah, I don't get energy for it. You know, some people like, you know, my girlfriend, classic example, like she just gets energy from that. Just pump her up. For
infectious.
Me, I'm like, yep, straight
down.
Right,
okay.
But it is.
Even that's so interesting. I'm going to dwell on that, mate. You're a Victoria Cross recipient. You are Dashing Dan from Derapat, mate. You're also a lot of else in between, but I can imagine most people are coming to hear the profile and then walk away really impressed with the man. But how is that emotionally draining? Is it in the prep and the lead up to it, or is it?
I'm not sure. I think it for me it is because I have to be sort of extroverted for that period of time, nearly that I don't know. It absolutely fatigues me doing it.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, I still
you still feel like you're being your authentic self, though.
Oh yeah, look, it's still me. It's just a different version of me, nearly, where I do have to step it up and use some hand signals. But it is
not field signals, but hand signals. Got it. Yeah, good.
But it is for me. Look, it's challenging, but I do enjoy it because I do have a number of key messages there that are very relevant and important. And again, it comes back to trying to help people. So if I say something and it's related, yes, all my talks are related to combat, but there's lessons throughout those talks and scenarios that I talk about that are relevant to everyday life and certainly business as well. And some of it's personal ethos and core values. Some of it has to do with the importance of planning, other things, everything we've done in the military that we take for granted. But for me, when I go and do this, it is again trying to get people to be better at what they do and to not dwell on the negatives and to push on, right? So I'm always about, get off the couch and crack on. So
good, mate, good. I mean, that's having that purpose behind you is a key part. A lot of the guys and girls that they're sort of engaging with who are really starting to fall off the wagon is that transitioning out of defence because they've sort of lost their purpose in there. They're not transitioning to another purpose. Like, I'll figure that out later. I might have a job that's high paying or things like that, but then appreciating that, money is really not a purpose that's really sustainable at the soul nourishing level.
Mate, I've been there and done that. I can tell you right now that's not the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, I mean, I did. I chased money there for a bit, for a couple of years, in fact, and I certainly wasn't happy. I was away more than I've ever been in my life. Wasn't at home at all. Like, it was great. I could, do what I wanted, certainly go out and if I wanted to do a holiday on that, but I had no time to do it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Like absolute end of the pump.
What about that sort of, that person that made you sort of chase, did you ever get like chasing money, having that feeling of trying to, or?
Look, I think it certainly didn't have a scorecard, but for me, I think it was because I had nothing. All of a sudden it's like, well, I need to take everything. I need to do absolutely everything. I can't say no. I think more so I can't let people down.
Yeah,
I think that was more the point of saying yes to everything, and then a byproduct of that was remuneration to doing what I was doing. But it wasn't the chasing money aspect. It was just, I think, again, that point of saying no.
Gotcha. Hollowing yourself out.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And then you sort of hit a point.
I did, yeah. So my mate who served with me as well as a manager and works with me as well, Marcus. And,
I love that.
He's a good guy, and he had a word to me. He pulled me up. He said, "Mate, what are you doing? Like, I can see a change in you, and it's not a good one.
Yeah,
you need to, again, find out what's important. We draw a little circle, right? Write a few things in there. What's actually important to you? Write everything down, then a bigger circle, and go, well, what's outside of that? Everything on the inside, well, that's important. That's what I need to focus on. Everything on the outside, well, that can wait.
Yeah, good.
And it was a bit of an exercise of me, doing a few doodles on a page and going, well, okay, that's not important. I could cut that away.
Specified, implied, essential tasks.
Yeah, no, I can't do that. What am I doing that? Okay, what is that? How does that benefit me or my mental health or whatever? Yeah, probably shouldn't be doing that. Honestly, I physically did that.
Yeah.
And it was again a reset for me to go, well, I need to get back again to what's important to me and my family at that point in time, me and my family generally.
Yeah.
And sort of have followed that methodology going forward, and I've been a lot happier for it.
That's fantastic, mate. And there's so many key messages in there. I want to jump on a couple of them. Again, sort of trying to relate this back to potentially any guys and girls hearing this at that point in their career in defence, or potentially already have, and having another adjustment. Once you transition once, I transitioned 4 times my first year out, and you've gone through plenty, like the Victoria Cross aside, mate, like plenty of others personally and professionally. And there's a lot of people who sort of come out of defence, particularly, let's say in the combat corps in Army, and really feeling like, going to the mines or going to security is some of the safest bets for them. They don't really feel like a lot of them have very transferable skills. And then they potentially go to those places like applying for jobs and things like that. And then all of a sudden, they start to realise that we're actually good at solving problems. We're actually good at like deconstructing things and reconstructing them. We're actually good at working with people and teams and understanding true value and helping to encourage and motivate and support others, and work ethic like nothing you've ever seen before. And all of a sudden, you start realising that there's actually so many things you can possibly do, and then shiny things start popping up everywhere. And you start going and collecting all these shiny things because you potentially have gone from a place where you actually doubted that you had the skill sets to do some of these things. Mm-hmm. Also, it's exciting. There's potentially money there. There's variety there. Yep. And you end up burning yourself out. And one of the key support mechanisms here is so key along the way in leaving this culture that previously protects you and catches you, is then who you actually are surrounding yourself with to help provide you with those combat indicators, because we are the worst at doing it for ourselves.
Absolutely. 100% agree, mate.
And how did you go about finding those people? Mate, particularly as a Victoria Cross winner, I'm sure you had people wanting to help you out left, right and centre, probably for some of their own agendas as well.
Yeah, look, man, I think that some of the negative side of it is, look, I've certainly found out who my true friends were and what, some people just wanted to be near me. That's cool. Some people had always been there and are still there. And I have probably 5 really good mates that have always been there and know exactly who I am and, trust them with my life. I've been there, life and death situations sort of guys and have had my back and I've had theirs. And I think I've been very fortunate that I have maintained those relationships. But let's be honest, I've cut people away along the way.
Yep.
And I've cut them away for different reasons. Some of them were, negative people or whatever they're going through their own situation at that point in time. And there's periods where people are coming in and out of my circle, I suppose is a good way of defining it.
Yeah.
Because of their own sort of personal, situations are going. And then I'm always there. The door's always open for me to reconnect with them, right? But I felt at a certain point that there was a number of individuals, not my close friends around me that were absolutely bringing me down and changing my mentality, nearly going, well, having a negative impact on me. And I think I came home one night and it's like, well, I think that's starting to affect me. I think it's time that I stopped spending so much time with them. And I did. And all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, again, I have a bit more energy and a lot more positive about things. And mate, it's fascinating by how those that you have around you and how they can affect your performance and your mindset.
Absolutely. And we talk about that transitioning in purpose. And as you even transition in your purpose at a major or minor level, there's then that subsequent adjustment to the physical and human terrain around you. And, I particularly want to situate this in the context of, coming out of 2020 being COVID. A lot of people have been pushed into things like, isolation, uncertainty, a lot of those aspects that, again, veterans transitioning from defence or anyone transitioning out of anything, be that levels of performance or career or purpose, are going through. And what I've found really across the board is, then people are really surprised when that finally catches up that also requires a transition often to the people you keep around you. Because as you change, then those around you either have to sort of change with you to authentically support your purpose, or you attract new ones. And it's just actually appreciating that that's a normal part of life.
Absolutely, 100%, man. That's a very articulate way of putting it. But it is, for me, I have noticed, certainly I've had those in defence that are still my friend from day one, right? But they've also changed careers as well, and they've grown. I mean, I've certainly changed, as a person, really changed, but how I think's changed dramatically, and who I associate with changed dramatically, not just because of the social circumstances I find me in, but that's just the reality of what I'm doing now, right?
I'm with you. But that's that layer. That's that mateship layer.
Yeah,
you've that purpose of mateship, purpose of the team. It's fantastic that when that is truly authentic, that's the team that goes with you, regardless of what changes personally or career wise.
Yes, 100%, and it has. I think there's a couple of good points as well I can sort of talk about there as well. Certainly for this year, and you did mention it, but for last year I didn't, because COVID happened. I didn't set any goals at all. But this year I'm like, it's not even a New Year's resolution. It's like the start of the year. It's like, what? Last year I didn't do it. This year I won't tell you what they are because that's on the personal. But I mean, for me, I think everyone needs to do that at least once a year or every 6 months. Go, well, what am I going to achieve in these 6 months? Like actually write it out. Go, what am I going to achieve? Who are my mentors going to be? And, we could talk about professional mentors, personal, whatever, but have a number of mentors there as well that can help you on that journey and actually seek them out and have that conversation. Go, well, I want you to be a mentor for these reasons and this purpose. Will you do that? I don't think I've had a single person say no to me yet when I've asked them.
That's awesome.
So I think, that's a few things as well to keep you on track when there's so much uncertainty and
clear conversations. Yeah. Clear and articulate conversations. I recently had one of those conversations. I've always sort of danced around this whole, like, what is a mentor thing? And it actually even comes from a place of potentially competition and pride. It's just appreciating it's actually vulnerable. It's like, hey, I don't know everything, but who's someone out there that I'm very impressed with what they do in this area or that area, or I generally feel cares about something, and looking for that personal development, but also just having those conversations and even dovetailing back to talking about those transitions and friends beforehand. So many of the people problems we face these days, and you probably face it in the corporate world, come down to not clear and articulate communication and assumptions and
every day, mate. Assumptions. Yeah, every day. Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%.
Even sitting down, people and say, "Hey, look, I don't know what's going on, but like, what is your purpose? Like, what is going on?" Breaking down why someone is doing what they're doing, alleviates that uncertainty on a personal level, and we have that at an intuitive level within our defence community and those we maintain outside of. We pick up on that. But I feel it's so important for those, particularly new ones who bring into our lives, to actually help them better understand who we are and take the time to understand who they are.
But I think another way of putting it is, what's your value proposition, right? Seriously, I'm not going to get, but for me, like we certainly do it at work all the time. Every time we touch something new, what's the value proposition? But you can look at that personally as well. What do I bring?
Absolutely.
And actually think about that and define what that is, because it's going to be different for everyone. But I think it's important to at least know yourself, because I guarantee if you ask someone on the spot, they'd be like, I don't know.
I'm with you. And doing that and even having those conversations and asking people to help you define your value proposition, because the next thing I want to step to is actually accountability.
Yep.
Again, within defence and outside of this and within that peer group, we maintain our own accountability. But too often I find people these days try and probably hold back some of those clear communications, try and hold back potentially some of those activities that you're talking about for fear of potentially not meeting up to those. Whereas I've found putting it all out there, not being afraid to actually being wrong or having that change, but needing others to actually help me be accountable. Because if I don't have other people to help me be accountable, sometimes I can't be trusted to hold myself accountable. What's your experience with accountability been?
Fascinating, because it is. Yeah. I mean, I've always looked at it like this. If I don't know the answer straight away, I'm like, put your hand up. How are you going to be excellent if you're holding all the cards and you don't, maybe a couple of them,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So you need those around you, and that's the planning part. And you don't plan in isolation, or you don't do things in isolation. You need the people around you, right? Yep. Absolutely. And I'm never afraid to go put my hand up and go, look, I honestly don't know what is going on here, or this has actually happened. Because now that you've voiced that and you've got a number of other people in the room, all of a sudden you go, well, hang on a minute, that guy over there has done 10 years in a different area that can help you resolve this problem that you've just got, but you had no idea until you voiced it. Yep. I think it's so important that we have those conversations.
Absolutely. Mate, I remember from my Special Forces days when I marched in as a platoon commander at the end of 2010. I was the youngest in my platoon and 2 commando. And I had, back then I had the Bravo, who's a sergeant, 1-1 and 3-1 sergeants. My 4-1 was also a sergeant, and then they've all got, all these corporals. And, for those not listening, when you do Special Forces selection as the NCO, you go back to a private rank and then build yourself back up again. And I had a former sergeant who was a private and all this. And, I say that planning in isolation is planning to fail. And particularly in the wider army as a young platoon commander, there was a lot of self-reliance on some of the tactics and come up with decisions. I always had fantastic platoon sergeants and section commanders to help me out, but I will be the first person to say that throughout every single mission I did in Afghanistan, I got to sit there and just help lead and manage a amazing planning team who provided me with amazing ideas. And the hardest part for me was to pick through the best pieces of each and put them all together, then take ownership of that, be accountable for that, and communicate that in a way that then motivated people to achieve it. And, then tactics on the ground, but you're literally setting yourself up for failure if you're not willing to accept your own limitations, your own vulnerabilities, and then empower others to help you all to collectively be the best you can be.
But I mean, that goes in hand in hand with they're helping you as well, right? So all of a sudden they feel responsible as well. So then they've got buy-in, and of course they want you to succeed because they've contributed to that plan. So then you're bringing everyone along as well. Yeah,
leadership 101. Now, when you have then transitioned to and now work within the corporate space, one of the biggest things for me, I did my official transition 2 years ago and go back in and work with some of these corporates, is that it's unwilling to be vulnerable by accepting that they might not have the best idea and feeling like they need to know everything. Sitting with these people, and admittedly they haven't gone through most of them haven't gone through any form of professional leadership training. They've risen to their rank through competence in role or time in rank, essentially. And they're very sort of possessive. They think decisions and knowledge is power, and trying to decouple and de-link that to bring in that environment and encourage people to act with initiative as opposed to being micromanaged and delegated. That was one of the really insightful things I got to see from my limited exposure. I'm keen to see what you've encountered in yours.
Oh, mate, I think you've defined that well. I think the emotional intelligence part of it as well is lacking greatly. And you're right. Everyone wants to hold the cards because they don't want to ask the question as well. And I think I found that certainly with my MBA stuff going back to there as well, as we're going, if someone does say something, I'd be like, well, I don't actually know what you're talking about. I guarantee you I'm not the only person in this room that has no idea what you're talking about.
I love it.
But I'm not afraid to go, well, hey guys, I have no fucking
What I
idea
love
you're
is
talking
that
about.
that's actually like leadership through moral courage in the most mundane daily tasks that people might gloss over. But it actually takes courage to stand up and do that.
I suppose it does in a way. I bet
Yep.
it doesn't. I don't care if I look like an idiot. I just
No, but the key thing is you're not doing it for anything other than authentic purpose. That is to learn and better understand this.
at least, yeah, you're right. But now at least I know the answer to that. And the next time someone brings it up, I'm not going pretending that I know. Oh, okay, yep, I've got a, full bottle on that. Which reality is I've got no bloody idea what they're talking about. Then make your decision or a plan on something where I actually don't know the facts and have decided to cover it up because I don't want to look bad in front of other people.
Absolutely. I mean, during my career, some of the best times I found was I have sort of two sayings with being in leadership position or being in charge. I look forward to the days when the job is done and it's no longer doesn't need me, or someone's been able to be trained up to better than me. And particularly if you have a hand in training that next person up. And that's what I really see is particularly within even within the defence, unfortunately, we get to see it a lot these days as well. And hopefully some people can listen to hear this, but even in the corporate space, anyone in some sort of leadership role, it's actually just how much more empowering it is to bring people along the path with you and have more people who can do your job through, be that redundancy so you can go on a holiday, through to just building the engine power and passing on to the future of capability. It's really changing that purpose and mindset behind why you're doing something and appreciate by making people feel valued, helping them be empowered and initiative along the way. You're actually going to set everything up for better success.
Mate, look, absolutely. And so many conversations I have where there's one person holding the cards, and it's a point of failure often going, well, what happens if that individual disappears from this project or something?
Yep.
What's going to happen?
Redundancy.
Next?
Good old redundancy.
So anyway, yeah.
Speaking about redundancy and even transitioning from defence, for a lot of us, it's a huge thing leaving defence. We feel like there's literally like blood, sweat and tears, and a lot of people we've lost away that sort of leave that part of our soul back in that. But sort of appreciating that you leaving defence, the defence's job is to put, let's say, the best 15 on the rugby field every single day. So while we may come and go, they have to maintain that priority. And a big part of the mindset with veterans transitioning these days is feeling devalued in that transition process because they don't feel like they're sort of lingering and remembered, and the separation is, from having your name spelt miscorrectly on your certificate. I still haven't got mine posted to me, but it's just sort of appreciating. It's very easy in that part of the transition place to allow that entitlement to keep in, as opposed to appreciating that there's actually a responsibility that needs to continue. And I'm really intrigued to hear about your transition, particularly to that mining piece, and how you were still able to maintain your value back to defence, or if that was no longer a priority for you personally.
No, look, absolutely. So I look at it like this. I chose to join. There was nothing there except for my decision. It was my decision to join up. It was my decision to leave as well. And I always looked at it, why should I expect others to do something for me when it was my decision in the first place to do it? So that's how I looked at it. So I suppose that's why I didn't have any negative sort of connotations around that. But for me as well, I think it's difficult for people because the onboarding process, I'll define it as the onboarding process. We do our basic training, then we do our, initial employment training, then we do specialised courses. But then you leave defence and it's like, well, this is what I've done for X amount of years. There's a transition ceremony, thing now potentially, which is a couple of hours of someone talking at me, and then all of a sudden I'm on my own again.
Yeah,
like I can understand. I know it's changed a lot. There's been a number of things put in place, and we still haven't seen the outcome of all these changes that have been made. Because I know they're doing it better than what it was when I went through. That's for sure. Yeah, I didn't even attend a transition ceremony. I don't think even the option. I think it was sent out field going, "Oh, you can't do that. We've got other things for you."
Yeah, good job.
Well, literally, that was the conversation at that point in time. So it is, it's 12 months of onboarding, then all of a sudden it's see you later. So I can understand why people feel as if they've been let down. But me personally, I never looked at it like that. And again, it's that mindset. We're going, well, again, I chose to sign up and I chose to, at this point in time, for whatever reason, leave. So then I had a plan after that I put in place. Yep. And for me, it was, getting licenses and, heavy rigid and driver's license, this and that, right? But I had to pay for all that. That's fine. But again, that was my choice to leave. So I don't know. That's how I've always looked at it. No, that's good, mate. Taking control, and even as a ownership, mate. It's probably a better way of putting it.
Taking control of your actions, essentially, like you said. One of the interesting part, particularly in the army and defence aspect, is we are actually pretty self-reliant individually, and then with our team. And the biggest risk for disappointment is actually when someone says they're going to do something, and you become expectant on that. And there's part on them if they don't follow through with that, but there's also part on you to allow yourself to then become reliant on others unless there's like a mutual respect and alliance there. So a lot of people, exactly as you're saying, all of a sudden like get to that transitions piece and be like, this is what's meant to happen and this is what I'm entitled to. It's like, well, hey, you're now entitled actually to be responsible, to utilize what you have and to actually take charge and lead yourself from this point forward, because you have, and as you would be able to attest to that, I am a better Australian because I was a veteran. And I have so many skill sets, from just basic problem solving through to being able to maneuver around things to solve those problems, that are so applicable in everyday life. And if you just need to sit there and, like you said before, just take control and be responsible for yourself and put it into action, you're going to succeed. But if you sit back and wait for what you think you're entitled for, you're going to be waiting a long time, and that's when you're going to start doubting yourself, and it's going to start creeping in.
Absolutely, mate. That's a very well said. I have seen that personally through others and friends that I've served with go through that journey of hanging back and waiting and feeling like they are entitled to something. And I've had that conversation. And
the longer you wait for someone, it's like you're waiting for a date. You're like, they're meant to be here. They're meant to be here. It's like, hey, they're not here. What am I going to do next? Yeah. And it's so hard to. And to be honest, I even found myself going to one of those places a bit. It was just some medical stuff I needed to do, and it really actually just took others to say, hey, look, why are you waiting? Like, get out there and make something happen concurrently. Stop sitting there getting in your sads and make it happen. And that's where we get back to keep making sure that you do sort of keep some of those people around you that you're able to cut through and help you to tap back into that purpose.
That's my girl. Okay, so she's that person for me.
Yeah.
She absolutely is for me. We have those conversations, and she's a doer, that's for sure. Get stuff done, mate. And it brings me along because I am that introvert as well, and I need that personally. So that's, a person around me that helps me out. But, I mentioned that before, the mentors and your friend circle that you bring with you.
Yep.
Mate, keep positive people around you and good things will happen.
For sure. How do you derive personal value? What makes you feel valued doing something? As in response from people. Have you heard of the love languages?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
what's yours?
Mine, I think absolutely that is doing things for others.
Yeah, acts of service.
Yeah, acts of service, or acts of service is probably the best way to define it. Yeah.
But what about, that's how you show love? How about how you receive love? How you feel valued for doing something?
Yeah, I think it varies for everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think appreciation, I think acknowledgement.
Yep, gotcha.
Certainly not words of affirmation, but I think a bit of acknowledgement of the fact that you have gone above and beyond or out of your way. Yeah, gotcha. It's probably all it takes, mate. So
I'm with you. So interesting. I want to dovetail from that into the Victoria Cross, and in particular, mate. The next round we're going to go into talk to the book in detail. But one key point I wanted to bring out was there's some conversation in your book talking about when the Australian Day 2011 came around, and a bunch of honours and awards are passed on to the boys. But your name wasn't in there, and everyone obviously within the group thought that you performed to the most. And that feeling within you, was there potentially a feeling that you had performed to a level whereby you expected or not entitled to, but let's just say qualified for some form of recognition? And you're allowed to say that because you've gone in and seen the benchmark, and not saying a Victoria Cross or anything, but just some form of, you went above and beyond and what had previously occurred, that sent a benchmark that set in your mindset and expectation there. And then how that felt when you sort of weren't recognised and all your other peers were.
But that's an interesting, a number of different things there. I think the first one is I was actually really happy that those that I had nominated were actually, because I wrote up a number of individuals as well, because what I saw was amazing work, exceptional work on the ground and under trying circumstances.
Yep.
So I think there's a bit of pride there as well, going the boys done well and they've been recognised for that. For me personally, and I have always said this and absolutely believe it, is I was just doing my job at that point in time.
Yep.
Albeit from a tactical point of view, potentially wasn't that sound, because I knew the ramifications. If I had got shot, would have taken more team members out, and
all that,
all that sort of stuff. I lost the advantage. So for me, I didn't really dwell on it too much. It was a bit of I've left defence. I've transitioned out. I was out by that point in time, and I was working the mines. So I thought, for me, I look back there and at that time, and I certainly wasn't expecting anything. No. I thought, I've just been looked over because I've transitioned out. Honestly, that was the thought process at that point in time. But I think I was just happier that those that I'd seen do exceptional work were recognised. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. That's really, it's beautiful to hear that. I mean, you would have obviously, you're a corporal, you're a section commander at that time, and you obviously have some perspective of what was the usual, not expectation, but usual sort of standard by which things could be measured after seeing others get honours awards and things like that, and then what you wrote up for your guys and saw them get theirs. Did it ever make you doubt not receiving an honour award of what you did and the importance of what you did, or did it ever change and make you doubt if you were potentially thinking that what you did was more spectacular than what it was?
For that circumstance in Afghanistan that day, I would say no. But funnily, you should bring that up, because there was another incident in Iraq, in 2006, where I personally at that point in time thought I went above and beyond here at this point in time,
right.
and no one saw what I did. You know what I mean? And there was no recognition whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
But how strange is that?
Yeah.
And then Afghan comes around, and there's all this stuff going on, and life and death sort of situations, and I didn't have that mentality whatsoever.
Yeah,
completely different. But I did for this other incident, which was years before, where I'm like, well, I did something pretty exceptional here, and didn't even get a look in or anything, not even a pat on the back.
Well, what about since then? There's been a lot of water under the bridge. There's been a lot more honours and awards given out since then. And as you then look back through not only your career, but the career of others that you served with during Iraq and Afghanistan, I find myself looking back and going, there was definitely a point where I definitely felt that myself and others I was with sort of probably standardized a lot of excellent things. And again, it's sort of like doing your job, and it's difficult sometimes not to buy into the medallic recognition, the giving and receiving gifts, or the words of affirmation, essentially, particularly when, I don't know about you, but the defence culture I got brought up in was very reliant on that being the demonstration of experience, if not competence. And then looking back and seeing, was there potentially times whereby, hey, guys actually did exceptional things that by today's unit of measure might have been more recognisable back then?
Mate, that is the flaw in the honours and award system, isn't it? Because I can tell you right now, at the start of my journey of doing operational deployments to the end of it, operating very different to certainly a different standard, a higher standard and level, and doing things that 10 years previously you would think were amazing and not even possibly human. So that is the flaws that we have within the system. But yeah, absolutely, that is true, where the norm can become very strange very quickly. And what I mean by that is, the fact of even getting shot at becomes normal, or IEDs going off around you, or, rockets coming in, and it becomes normal. But I mean, that's not normal, right?
No, absolutely.
But it is to, it certainly is to those that
not only is it normal, it's desirable.
But it is. But it is so strange how then you define what is a benchmark, right? What is a benchmark? Because all of a sudden, you're into it all the time. So then the standards, you're setting higher standards for yourself and your team as you go along as well, right? So it gets to the point where you're doing things potentially that even 12 months ago, if you're in country, you wouldn't have even dreamt of doing that or have the confidence to do that as well. Yeah. So it's strange to then signal someone out when you're performing at that high level to go, have they gone above and beyond at this point in time? Yeah. And the answer is, well, everyone's gone above and beyond at this point in time. So
yeah, absolutely. So I want to close out on honours and awards, and again in the next episode, really going to go on to and speak in some great more detail on your book, mate, because it's an absolute must read. But so a large part, again, I'm just trying to close off this entitlement piece and the honours and awards. I sort of have some personal issues with the way in which we approach honours and awards, not honours and awards in itself. So my personal experience was, I went to join Turai, I went to Timor. By the time I got to 2 Commander, again, like I was saying, I was one of the youngest as a platoon commander. At the mess, I had my Timor gong, my coat gong, and that was about it. And I was around dudes who had chests full of, you did an SOTG deployment in 2010. I got to the unit in 2010, and guys had already done them beforehand as well. And there was definitely a culture there whereby medallic recognition equaled competence, let alone experience. And that wasn't harboured by all, that was harboured by some. And then I really feel like during defence we've gone down this bit of a road whereby a lot of people are, we've standardised excellence first and foremost. We haven't actually appreciated some of the amazing situations we've been in through hindsight. And then particularly a lot of those who weren't there and haven't lived those have then standardised people's performance in those by the medallic recognition for that. And a lot of people I have found have sort of felt devalued or undervalued, given that they didn't receive some form of recognition for what they did over there. But then this goes back to the conversation that most people are then able to quickly come about, is that, what did you do it for? Did you do it for medallic recognition? Are you defined by a medal? Are you defined by someone recognising what you did? Or is it coming down to the reason why you did it? And are you happy with the performance that you personally achieved out there? Now, sitting there as a Victoria Cross recipient, I'm not going to ask you there whether you think you deserve it. I've read the book. Others said that you have deserved it, mate. And regardless, I mean, you sit here as a fantastic ambassador for the medal itself, let alone what you did over there during your time. But you get to be in that position of being changed by getting the medal itself, having what you've been done defined by medallic recognition of the highest order. While you're swimming around in those thoughts and comments, I really love your insights on those who potentially feel lesser because they haven't seen medallic recognition, those who potentially place a lot of entitlement in their own medallic recognition, and really drilling into helping people identify and connect with their purpose behind doing things and not requiring affirmation of others to do their best performance.
Lots to unpack there.
Over to you.
Wow. Okay, so I think I would start by saying, and I've said this multiple times, one day in my life will not define me. Right.
Good.
So that straight away, that's my mentality.
Daily renewable contract.
Yeah, with that, right? Mm-hmm. So the next thing is, and I get approached often, having the Victoria Cross from individuals, and one of the first things that annoys me the most from someone that has served and has chosen to serve, when they say, well, I've never been anywhere, I haven't gone anywhere, like as if they're lessening themselves straight away by the fact that they haven't had an opportunity to go on an operational deployment.
Yep.
And usually I pull people up straight away, because I say straight away is that, mate, or whoever they are, at this point in time, you have no power realistically, whether or not the government or your unit chooses to take you up over someone else and send you on operational deployment. You decided to serve and you chose to serve. That's all that matters to me.
Absolutely.
Everything else I couldn't care less about. If you've got a number of gongs, if you've been on 20 operational deployments, it doesn't matter anything. Like some of the individuals, yes, you've obviously been thinking your experiences are those because you can see them, but just because you don't have medals on your chest doesn't mean you don't have your own experiences and you haven't got your own things to impart and share with others as well.
Absolutely.
So that's how I see that, honestly.
That's powerful. You signed up for service, you signed up for uncertainty.
Yep.
I would say a large part of a lot of the successes I found in my career actually came down to opportunity, and as long as I was good at my job and a good person and often right place, right time, it's performance in those opportunities. And you've obviously, and so many of the guys that you've served with, so many of the guys I've served with have gone above and beyond and exalt themselves in that. But you have to be in those opportunities to test yourself, to be able to apply your skill sets and those of your team.
Look, absolutely. And you're right. We wouldn't get repeat work or wouldn't do something if we weren't good at it, right?
Yeah.
But you had to put yourself out there to then take that step to then have a crack at it and then also get recognised because you've done an exceptional job.
Yep.
But anyway, so we've all gone over the place at the moment. But we'll go back to that point I made is for me, that is honestly how I look at it, where no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you chose to serve, and that's the benchmark there. That's it for me. Yep. Everything else, I couldn't care less how many places you've been. For me, I nearly chose not to wear my medals for Remembrance Day, and then I had to check myself, not because of any reason other than, well, I don't need to wear them, like because I was doing the national address this year, last year. Sorry,
yeah,
right. No,
we're on the border.
Yeah. And for me, it was just I had to check myself, going, oh, how would that be perceived if I didn't actually wear my medals that particular day? But for me, it is for me, honestly. Yeah, it's recognition of where I've been, but I know where I've been. I don't need to display that all the time and show people that's
it's a lag indicator. It doesn't define you tomorrow. It defines what you've done. But then it's like, what are you going to do with that from here on?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So honestly, that's how I look at it. Yeah.
Wow. So interesting. No, I absolutely love that, mate. And it's great to hear that. Unfortunately, so many people, particularly outside of the military, be that a promotion at work, whatever it is, public praise. We're getting back to these love languages. And I actually hate that defense has built such a system where giving and receiving gifts and public affirmation is actually so much by what people measure themselves, because I even remember running the selection course. I love the quiet achiever, the person who doesn't need recognition in order to absolutely kill themselves, metaphorically, to do what is needed for the team and for others. And they're the people that, are worth their weight in absolute gold. You can't melt them down from cannons, but they're worth their weight in absolute gold. So it's fascinating to hear that from you. And a lot of people might sit back and say that, that's easy when you're the Victoria Cross winner, but as we've heard here before, mate, like that's actually a responsibility, you know, as opposed to being able to rest on your laurels, you now have a responsibility to put that to use moving forward. So how's that for the gift that keeps on giving?
And look, I am happy to talk about, you know, I do honestly still to this day not think I'm worthy of what it is. Because I mean, as I said, I've got a book behind with all these names in there and the feats, right, of what they've done and what they've been through. But for me, look, I look back at that day and I was doing my job and potentially I should be dead for it. Did I change the course of the battle that day for my actions? And that's debatable. But honestly, you know, I often wonder what my life would be like. Not always, because I don't dwell on things too often.
Yep.
If I had have said no, it would be very different to what it is now. But then it wouldn't have afforded me the opportunity again to then talk about veteran issues and then to promote and support those that really need it.
Mate, sitting here talking to you, I'm so glad that you do have the Victoria Cross simply for your actions that you did on that day. And I know the menaces such as the Tim Hurleys and a few of those other boys in between. I definitely have had my ad for days, and since then, I love the part about someone else dressed him that morning at your medal ceremony. It's him to a T. But mate, the fact that you are sitting here with a sense of responsibility, with a purpose that is giving back to the community, and conducting yourself in the way you are and the language you're using, and like really breaking down and helping to define that you are truly and authentically you, apart from reading that, mate, it's fantastic. And again, I've met some very high performance people who have been thrust up into those areas, and it's very easy for them to then segue off to that entitlement, segue off to that arrogance, segue off to being anything but the role model. And you've done the complete opposite, and I have no doubt that it hasn't been all smooth sailing for you. But the one thing I like to do with this podcast, mate, is first and foremost, thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you are currently doing to the veteran community. And I know there's so many gold nuggets that people are going to be able to draw out of this, whether they're veterans or whether they're not. But I don't like just doing one-hit wonders. I like to then come back in 6 or 12 months and actually check in to see how you're going, how you're doing, and what's changed in your perspective. And as I said before, a little bit about accountability. Like, I don't want to go into your personal goals, but you know, what's something that when we check back in with you, be that in 6 months, be that in 12 months, you would like to see that you progress with personally or hold yourself to in accountability?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm happy to define some of them. Some of them, you know, personal, where it's, you know, last year I didn't go to the gym once. No, actually, that's wrong. I buzzed on this year, and it's like I went 17 times last year. That was it. Wow, got it. Okay. So for someone who, you know, was going 5-6 days a week, training all the time, to 12 months without even going in and not looking after myself. So personal goal this year is, you know, training 4 days a week again, and have been. Oh, it's only 2 weeks in, right? Yeah, gotcha. No, good. But yep, you know, 2 weeks in. And Brizzy says it's first COVID trap. Well done. And still managed to train, right? So yeah, good. Committed again, right? Again, refocused on that. One of them, you know, is, you know, not drinking as much alcohol. Yeah, you know? Gotcha. Stuff like that. One of them's director's course. So getting in and getting involved in that. And that's a goal this year that I wanted to do. So usually there's an element of bettering yourself through some sort of further learning. That's me personally, whether it be an online course or something. That's what, every year I try and do something. Get those brain cells firing. Yeah, whether it's a short course or something. And that's only happened the last couple of years where that, I think that's an ongoing goal of mine. Well, this year there's a project. What's it going to be? What am I going to learn this year? And every year going forward as well, continue to do that. So it's only been a few years in, but for me, I think that's important. I love that. Everyone picks their own goals and what they want to do, but for me, there's a few other ones there as well. But we have a Victoria Cross recipient here telling us that he wants to exercise more and drink less and continue with his self-development. Yeah. Like, just appreciating and understanding that, mate, be that in the corporate life or whatever, when people start to, when time gets tough, when people get busy, when people get depressed, when they get anxious, these are some of the first things that start to creep in or go by the wayside. And mate, you're sitting here as a modern day hero, you know, saying that, you know, back to the basics are still so critical for you. So if there's even anything that people have been listening to our waffle can pull away from this, like investing in yourself. So important. How can you deal with the challenges if you haven't invested in yourself and you haven't got the foundations there to deal with everything else, right? That's how I look at it. It's probably a good way of defining it, is the foundations, and that is yourself. How, you know, looking after your mental health, looking after your physical health, looking after yourself, right? So then you can go out there and absolutely kill it, right? Do well. And what I even love is this progression, mate. You really help articulate to us your emotional power, your intrinsic motivation, your purpose, giving back to the community in your work.
in all the forms of work that you currently do. That community, you're surrounding yourself with those people to help you be inspired, be motivated and be accountable. And then you finally have time now, hopefully in this next year, to start looking after yourself, work your way back into that core and help yourself.
It is, yeah. Looking, last year was a bit of a change. Yeah. Look, it was a change, certainly a change again in routine.
Yeah,
it's so strange when your routine gets thrown out, right? So I think that's part of it. It is that routine as well, and that routine happens to have training in there and again personal development in there as well, because that was my routine beforehand.
Yep.
I think it's important to get back to that, and I think it's those positive things. Get rid of the negative things that crept in, and focus again on the positive things that were part of my life going forward.
Love it. Mate, well, it's been an absolute pleasure. We look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks so much for being on.
More than happy to chat with you again in a few months.
Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of a Veteran podcast. We really hope that there were some key takeaways that might help you, be they relatable, be they aspirational. But we're not just here for your entertainment, so please make sure you remember, move on and action from here.
And that's it, guys. If you've heard something here today that has truly helped you, it's our duty to share that information with as many as we can. Support is about being proactive, and that's taking action to better our own lives as well as the lives as many mates as we can.
We love your support getting these messages out, so please subscribe, go to our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Voice of a Veteran. Catch you next time.
See ya.